Tonight in our focus with the SABC News Economics Editor, we're looking at the publishing industry, and it's often said or lamented that not enough South Africans are reading to ensure a thriving and sustainable publishing sector. But textbooks, we can tell you, are still big business, most of the sales coming from producing materials for the Department of Basic Education. The educational textbook sector, in fact, is estimated at over 2 billion rand annually, which is about 60% of the revenue that publishers make. To discuss, we're joined by our economics editor, Tshepo Mangoai. Great to have you with us, as always, on a Monday, our little appointment. So let's bring up this graph and just take us through how academia or basic education is driving revenue and the increase in revenue.
Well, Francis, as you correctly pointed out, the education is actually the mainstay of this sector. It's estimated around 3.4 billion rand. Obviously, we had COVID, so the figures could come out slightly less than that, but surely around 3 billion rand. That's the revenue that we're looking at. The academia's part of things, it's a small sector. It also includes professionals, so it's not as big as your education material that are distributed.
There we've got academic, trade, then education going up.
Yes, trade. This is the books that you and I buy for leisure. It's a fraction of what the market actually produces. The main one being education, which obviously you think of the Department of Basic Education. They spend billions in this industry, supporting, in fact, sustaining this industry, because if you remove the education segment, then you actually have a very limping industry without that.
Looking ahead, there must be concerns, firstly, about kids using iPads and things like that in future, but we know it's not really sustainable yet. But there are also concerns about who's getting the profits from this in the first place. Tell us more.
Well, in terms of our research that we did, we found that the multinationals are actually the biggest winners in the sector. You do have, like some, traditional publishers that are well established and are big in this industry. But this is the space for multinational that continue to drive activity, especially in the what is the nerve center of this industry, which is the education, publishing. So there are concerns that the industry hasn't transformed. It's still the industry that is driven, they say, mainly by in terms of decision making. You've got white female that dominate this industry. Emerging publishers are struggling to enter the curriculum space, which is, you have to be in the curriculum space in order to survive.
But this is interesting because government wants to help local black suppliers, black-owned suppliers, through procurement. So you think local textbooks are a great tool for that. What are the things stopping local players from entering?
Well, barriers to entry. Francis, to enter the curriculum space, it's very, very expensive. Emerging guys would not actually be able to keep up with the cost because in terms of the requirements, in fact, it's interesting, Francis, because the requirements of the Department of Basic Education makes it extremely difficult to enter the curriculum as a publisher, because you must have a track record. You produce a book that should be in circulation, and then when time comes, then there's a bidding process. They will evaluate those books. They only allow, I think, about 8 books per subject, per grade. So they will put those books, once they have been approved, and to form part of the national catalogue.
Okay, so it's very difficult to get in, but I mean, does government have a role to play here? We also talk about decolonizing education, so government should be concerned about giving young people also access to black authors and things like that.
That's the question, that government should actually have been a driver of transformation in this industry, because they're spending a lot of money in this industry, but they are not. In fact, some of the conversations have been around whether what we need to do is to have a state-sponsored publisher And of course, that has created jitters in the market because you're actually taking away revenue from the industry in order to survive.
And what's interesting, despite these high standards that you talk about, that only the multinationals can meet at the moment, we've had incredible textbook scandals, but that's also about date of delivery and things like that, not always the publishing sector involved there.
Yes, absolutely, because I think the books, once they are approved, they should be in circulation for around 3 years, and then during that 3 years, sometimes they order books because books get damaged and so forth. So that keeps the industry going before there's some changes in the curriculum. So it's still a big issue. They've tried to introduce the digital, but we know that there are problems there, theft. They get broken, and our country is vast, and sometimes we don't have right resources because you need to charge a tablet and so forth.
So this is a quandary. I mean, we'd love a tablet in the hands of every learner, but like you say, problems,
it's cheaper,
and that is also a threat to the publishing industry.
Yeah, it's quite cheaper. If you have a book on a tablet, it's cheaper than printing a book, so it can bring down the costs of material, study material, and it'll be more accessible. So there are huge advantages. But based on some of the discussions that I've had with the publishing industry of South Africa, they acknowledge that there isn't much transformation. Of course, in terms of BEE, there's level 1. I mean, companies are doing well because they, so and so has got shares in those companies and so forth. But in terms of broad, empowerment of players in the industry, it's lacking. So the industry is trying to come up with a master plan driven by the Publishing Association of South Africa, and they're hoping to take it to Parliament. We don't know if it will be taken under the Department of Arts and Culture or Department of Basic Education, because there seems to be an overlap in terms of interest in this industry. So hopefully it will be quite clear going forward.
All right, fascinating. Thanks. So a quick look, zooming at the publishing industry, and we'll see if anything shifts there in terms of local players getting involved. That was our business editor from SABC News, Tshepo Mangoai.